There are moments in life when we feel like the door has closed for good. We look back at the opportunity we missed, the job we didn't take, the relationship that slipped through our hands, the dream we let go of, and we begin to wonder if that was our one and only chance. We feel regret, we feel lost, and we start to believe the lie that it's all over. But I want to tell you today, with every ounce of certainty in my soul, that when you walk with God, no missed chance is final. He is the God of redemption, the God of second, third, and even 100th chances. What may feel like the end is often just the beginning of something greater. You may have missed a moment, but God has not missed His purpose for you. Your story isn't finished, not even close. There are seasons in life when it seems like nothing is moving forward. You pray, you wait, you strive, and still the breakthrough doesn't come. The dream remains distant. The door stays shut. The healing doesn't happen. The answer doesn't arrive. And in those moments the heart grows weary. The mind begins to doubt. You start to wonder if the promise you once held onto was ever real. You begin to think maybe you misunderstood your calling, or maybe you missed your chance altogether. But there is something you must understand deep within your spirit. A delay is not a denial. The timing of heaven does not follow the ticking of our clocks. What looks like a detour in your life may actually be the very path God is using to write a deeper story, a greater testimony, a more powerful purpose. You see, when we feel stuck, God is still moving. When we see silence, He's working in the background. And when we feel forgotten, He is preparing something we cannot yet comprehend. Too often we try to measure God's favor by immediate results. We think if the doors don't open fast, then God must be saying no. But the truth is, God is not interested in quick fixes. He is interested in transformation. He's not just trying to get you to the next level. He's building a foundation inside you that can sustain His blessings. He's growing your character, shaping your heart, and purifying your motives, so that when the promise comes, you're ready to carry it with humility and strength. There are people who feel like their story is over because of a missed opportunity. Maybe you let fear hold you back. Maybe someone else got the job, the position, the promotion. Maybe you feel like life passed you by while you were standing in the waiting room. But listen closely. God is not finished with you. He has not turned the page and left you behind. In fact, He may be rewriting your story in a way you never expected. The chapter you thought was the end may just be the turning point. What you thought was a failure may actually be the setup for your greatest victory. Think about how many times in the scriptures we see people who thought it was over. Joseph was thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, falsely accused, and thrown into prison. For years, nothing seemed to go right, but God was working behind the scenes. He was preparing Joseph to lead a nation, to save a people, to be a voice of wisdom in a time of crisis. Had Joseph been elevated too soon, he would have lacked the maturity and depth to handle what was coming. But because God delayed the promise, He didn't deny it. He refined it. Maybe today you feel like Joseph. Maybe you feel buried, hidden, passed over. But the soil is not your prison. It's your preparation. Seeds don't grow in the spotlight. They grow in the dark. And just because you haven't seen the fruit yet, doesn't mean the roots aren't growing deep. God is working in you, through you, and around you, even when you don't feel it. Sometimes the delay is there to protect you. What you wanted so badly may not have been the right fit, the right time, or the right place. God sees what you cannot. He sees the end from the beginning. He sees the traps ahead, the burdens you're not yet ready to carry, the blessings that need more time to mature. And in His mercy, He says wait, not because He's punishing you but because He's preserving you. Not because He's forgotten you, but because He's preparing something better. Don't let delay steal your hope. Don't let it make you bitter. Don't let it make you give up. When you surrender your timeline to God's hands, you step into the peace of trusting that His plan is always greater than yours. You stop striving and start abiding. You stop questioning and start believing again. You remember that God is not just the author of your story. He's the finisher. And what He starts, He always completes. There may be moments when people overlook you, doors close on you, or even when your own decisions seem to derail the future. But God is the God of restoration. He can take what was lost and make it whole again. He can recover the time you thought was wasted and redeem it for something far more glorious than you ever imagined. When He rewrites your story, He doesn't just erase the mistakes, He uses them. He weaves them into a narrative that declares His grace, His power, and His faithfulness. So walk forward with courage, trust Him in the silence, praise Him in the waiting, stand firm in the delay, because when the page turns, and it will, you'll see that every moment of waiting was filled with purpose. Every no was making room for a better yes. Every disappointment was leading you closer to divine appointment. You are not forgotten. You are not disqualified. You are being refined by the hand of a loving Father who sees far beyond what you see now. And the story He's writing will be worth every tear, every prayer, every unanswered question, every long night, every delayed dream. There are times when we look back on our lives and see the moments we missed. We remember the decision we didn't make, the opportunity we let slip by, the chance we were too afraid to take. And as we replay those memories in our minds, regret begins to weigh heavy on our hearts. We wonder what could have been. We ask ourselves if we've blown it for good. The enemy loves to whisper in those moments, telling you it's over, that you had your chance and now it's gone forever. But the voice of God says something entirely different. He says your missed opportunity is not the end. It is the beginning of a greater comeback. You see, God never defines you by a single moment of weakness. He doesn't cancel your future because of a misstep in your past. In fact, He often uses what we call failure as the very foundation for something greater than we ever imagined. The God who created the heavens and the earth is not limited by your missed chance. He is the God who brings beauty out of ashes, who restores what was lost, and who takes the broken pieces of your life and builds something even stronger. You may feel like you've fallen too far, waited too long, or failed too badly, but God is not finished with your story. That closed door, that lost opportunity, that painful decision, it may have seemed like the end, but it was actually part of His setup. A setup for redemption, a setup for breakthrough, a setup for a comeback that brings Him glory and renews your purpose. Think about the life of Peter. He walked with Jesus, talked with Him, saw miracles firsthand, but in the most critical moment, he denied even knowing his Lord, not once, but 3 times. He must have felt like he missed it, like he had ruined everything. But what happened next? Jesus didn't reject him. He restored him. He didn't erase Peter's calling. He reignited it. And on the day of Pentecost, it was that same Peter who stood boldly and preached a message that brought thousands to faith. The very man who failed was the man God used to ignite the fire of the early church. That's what God does. He takes our missed opportunities and turns them into divine setups. He allows us to come to the end of ourselves so that we can see the beginning of His grace. He removes the things we trusted in so we can lean fully on Him. He lets us fall not to destroy us, but to teach us how to rise in His strength. In your life, maybe there was a relationship you should have valued more, a calling you ignored, a path you strayed from. Maybe fear held you back when faith was calling you forward. But even now, God is saying the story isn't over. That missed chance was not the final word. His plans are still intact. His promises are still alive. What looks like a setback is only a setup in disguise. Sometimes God allows us to feel the weight of missed opportunity, not to punish us, but to prepare us. There's something about loss that sharpens your vision. There's something about failure that softens your heart. And there's something about hitting bottom that makes you ready to be rebuilt. The comeback doesn't happen despite the missed opportunity. It happens because of it. Because in that place of surrender, God has room to move. He takes your humbled heart and fills it with new hope. He lifts you up with a strength you didn't have before. He gives you a voice to speak life, a testimony, to encourage others, and a deeper compassion for those still in the fight. There are people who will try to define you by what you missed, but God defines you by what He's about to do. Others may remember your mistakes, But God remembers the potential He placed in you, and He has not changed His mind about your purpose. The comeback may not look like you expected. It may come through a different door, at a different time, in a different way, but it will be better, it will be greater, because this time, your trust will not be in your own ability, but in His power. Don't waste time mourning what's gone. Lift your eyes to what's ahead, shake off the shame, silence the lies, and stand in the truth that God is not limited by what you've missed. He is the master of second chances, the author of redemption, the God who brings rain to the driest desert. What He starts, He finishes, and if He's allowed something to slip through your fingers, it's only because He's placing something greater in your hands. Your comeback begins when you stop looking backward and start moving forward in faith. It begins when you trust that even the broken parts of your story are in the hands of a God who knows how to restore. It begins when you believe that He can still use you, not in spite of your failure, but through it. Because the very thing you thought disqualified, you may become the platform for your greatest impact. So rise again, dream again, trust again. You haven't missed your destiny. You're being prepared for it. God is not holding your past against you. He's using it to shape you. What looked like the end is just the middle, and what He's preparing you for is bigger than what you've lost. Let that truth settle deep in your spirit. Let it awaken your hope. Let it ignite your faith. The comeback is coming, and it will be greater than anything you thought you missed, because it's not built on your strength, your timing, or your perfection. It's built on the goodness, mercy, and unstoppable power of a God who never gives up on His children, and never lets a missed opportunity go to waste. When He's not finished writing your story yet, and what He has planned still waits ahead on the road, you're walking now by faith, not by sight, and He will meet you there not in judgment, but with open arms, ready to lift you into the next chapter of your divine purpose, and greater calling than you ever dared to imagine. There are moments in every life when it seems like the story is finished. The dream didn't happen. The door closed. The relationship ended. The job was lost. The diagnosis came. And suddenly, all the plans, all the hopes, all the steps you thought you were taking in the right direction, come to a halt. You look around and wonder how you got here. You feel the weight of disappointment pressing on your chest. The world says it's over. The voices in your head echo the same. You had your chance, and now it's gone. But the Word of God speaks a different truth. It says it's not over. It says what you see as the end, God sees as a beginning. It says that through faith, your setback can become the soil for a second chance. Faith is not a feeling. It is not wishful thinking. Faith is the unshakable confidence that God is who He says He is, and He will do what He has promised to do. Faith looks at the closed door and says there must be another way. Faith looks at the broken pieces and says my God can rebuild. Faith stands in the ashes and says beauty will rise from this. And friend, that kind of faith, real, raw, and rooted in truth, has the power to transform any failure into a future. All throughout history, God has chosen the unlikely, the broken, the cast aside, and the seemingly finished to do His greatest work. A man who was swallowed by a fish became a messenger to a nation. A shepherd boy overlooked by his own family became a king. A criminal hanging on a cross, with only moments to live, found paradise, because he had just enough time to believe. That's what faith does. It reaches past the wreckage. It moves through the ruin. It clings to the edge of hope, when everything else says let go. And in that space, when nothing else makes sense and the world says it's over, faith says not yet. You may have stumbled. You may have fallen so hard that you don't know how to get back up. But listen to the whisper of heaven over your life. It's not over. That failure, that delay, that heartbreak is not the final sentence. It may feel like the final chapter, but God is still writing. He's the author, and He does not stop the story in defeat. He writes redemption into the lines. He folds grace into every paragraph, and He turns what was meant for evil into something that gives birth to purpose, to power, and to praise. Faith does not deny the pain. It doesn't pretend the loss didn't hurt, but it sees beyond the pain to the promise. It sees that even now, God is working. Even now, God is near. Even now, Something is rising in the dark. There's something sacred about the moments we feel most lost, because it's in those places where we finally stop striving and start surrendering, where we let go of our timing and trust His, where we stop trying to fix it on our own, and invite Him to lead the way. And when God steps in, the impossible becomes possible. The closed road becomes a redirection. The no becomes preparation for a better yes. What felt like punishment becomes the pathway to purpose. He takes the disappointment and turns it into a divine encounter. He takes your breaking and makes it your breakthrough. Not because of who you are, but because of who He is. Faith is not about your ability. It's about your surrender. It's about laying down what you thought life was supposed to be, and picking up what God knows was always meant to be. There are people walking the earth today, who are living testimonies that it's not over. People who were told they'd never recover. People who were left behind, written off, given up on. But they believed. They held on to faith, when it was all they had left. And God honored that faith. He brought them out of addiction, out of grief, out of failure, and into freedom. Not because the journey was easy, but because they dared to believe that the God who started the work in them wasn't done. You may be standing at the edge right now, wondering if anything good can come from where you are. Maybe you've tried everything. Maybe you're tired. But friend, that's exactly where faith begins to grow. In the emptiness, in the surrender, in the waiting. When you say, Lord, I don't know what comes next, but I trust you. When you say, I can't see the way, but I know you've gone before me. When you say, I've made mistakes, but I believe your mercy is greater. That's the moment heaven leans in. That's the moment chains begin to break. That's the moment the second chance begins to rise. And let me tell you, the second chance isn't just about doing what you did before. It's not just about going back. It's about going forward, wiser, stronger, more humble, more faithful. The second chance is not a repeat. It's a rebirth. It's God saying, I'm not just going to restore what you lost. I'm going to give you more than you had before. I'm going to use your pain to help someone else. I'm going to turn your tears into a testimony. So lift your head, dry your eyes, take one more step. You're not too far gone. You're not too broken. You're not disqualified. You are loved. You are chosen. And you are being led through this valley by a God who specializes in comebacks. The kind of comeback that turns ashes into beauty, mourning into joy, and despair into a song of praise. It's not over, because God is not finished. And if you still have breath in your lungs, then heaven still has a plan for your life. The setback is not your sentence, it's your setup. Your delay is not your denial, it's divine timing. Your mistake is not your end, it's the moment God proves His mercy. You are not forgotten, and this valley is not forever. Hold on to faith, because the second chance is already in motion. And the one who holds your future is faithful to bring it to pass. And as He breathes life into what looked like ruins, and brings hope where there was silence, your story will shine not because it was perfect, but because grace carried you through, when nothing else could. And now you walk in victory, not by your own might, but by the mercy of the one who makes all things new, and brings glory from the places that once seemed beyond redemption. Because He alone can turn your greatest setback into the launching place of your greatest calling, and your faith, even the size of a mustard seed, is all He needs to begin again, and lead you into the second chance that was already written in His heart for you from the beginning. So now, as you stand at the edge of what once felt like defeat, know this: it's not the end, it's a divine new beginning. Lift your eyes to the one who restores, who redeems, who revives. What was lost will be returned in greater measure. What was broken will be made beautiful. Let your faith rise, not in your strength, but in His unfailing love. The same God who walked with you in the valley will lead you to the mountain. Your second chance has already begun. Step forward, not in fear but in faith, because with God, it's never over.